Looks like we are live. Welcome back to the SpinCycle. Let's see. Okay, I'm sure you guys heard about Bondi Beach in Australia, the terrible killing by two alleged ISIS members, a father and son, 24 and 50. Terrible tragedy. They opened fire on a Jewish community gathering on the first night of Hanukkah. Just horrific stuff. People are trying to turn it into a political thing. I mean, it inherently is a political thing because it's, you know, they're ISIS, so it is a political thing. But, you know, then Benjamin Netanyahu is trying to insert himself into the situation, saying he warned the Australians that they would encourage anti-Semitism by condemning Israel for the genocide in Gaza. Those are two separate things. And another thing to note is that ISIS and Palestine, they hate each other. So it doesn't really have, one thing doesn't really have anything to do with the other. But, you know, Netanyahu is going to make it about himself, just like he always does. So welcome back to the SpinCycle, guys. Thanks for watching my live feed. If you are watching, go ahead and subscribe, like, share this with a friend. That helps. But I appreciate all the subscribers. I just got over 2,800 subscribers. I was going for that for Christmas, so I hit it a little early, which is great. Now let's get to 29, 3,000, and, you know, hopefully someday be up there within my niche. But anyway, I'm back on my Reddit feed here. This is just Reddit in general. You know, if you guys watch my channel, you know I like the inflation feed, but this complaints feed has been, complaints feed or Reddit, you know, whatever you want to call it, has been intriguing me lately. And are right-wingers really that delusional? They think the country they live in will be all white. A lot of these immigrants are wealthier than them, and the highest household incomes are from immigrant families. Do they think America will deport people who bring more value than they do? I mean, that's what Trump's telling them. I don't know. Yeah, that's what Trump's telling them, but at the same time, he's saying, you know, we H-1B visas, we need them to bring in the talent and all that stuff, so... What else we got? Relocating, some of the stuff I look at on a daily basis. Deep market scan. Trump deflation is in many ways worse than inflation. Inflation totally neutralized. You don't want deflation. Let's take a look at that. Remember, when you can afford to eat, a billionaire makes less. Eat the rich. Okay. Eat is too nice a thing. There's only one thing they are any good for. eating fertilizer, soil and green. But also remember, you can always afford to eat a billionaire. Why would anyone want to taint themselves eating that garbage? They obviously don't like billionaires. So let's go back to my tried and true inflation Reddit here. Sorry guys.
My question is fiscal. With 450 million FEMA dollars being reallocated to open Alligator Alcatraz and 600 million taxpayer FEMA dollars being used to now open more concentration camps and ICE burning through $8.4 million a day to illegally detain people, how much does it cost for fascism? How much do the taxpayers have to pay for a fascist country?
Americans went to the polls in November, and they had a choice between a Democratic candidate that had an open border, no enforcement, fentanyl, drugs, human trafficking. And they had a choice between that and a candidate that said, close the border, get illegal immigrants out of our country, stop the fentanyl, stop the human trafficking, stop the drugs, stop the crime, stop the violence. That's what Americans voted for. Americans voted for a border that is secure. And I support the president enforcing our immigration laws, which, by the way, were written by Congress.
Check, 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 check. All right, that's working. They won't both work together. That's interesting. Okay, sorry guys, technical problems. I'm sure you all heard about the Rob Reiner death. That's just crazy. His 32-year-old son murdered him and his wife. Yeah. Just insane. Sorry, I'm having some technical issues this morning with OBS Studio, what I broadcast on, but I think I got it fixed now. Trumponomics. A Trump-friendly town in Nebraska is feeling the weight of his economic policies. This is a town of under 11,000 people, and 3,200 people will lose their jobs on January 20th when the Tyson plant in town closes. Yeah, I read about this yesterday. If you guys watched my feed yesterday, I played this video. Is this the video? No, it's just a screenshot, but yeah. Yeah, I mean, Nebraska went heavily for Trump. It sounds like that town, what did it say? It was like 78% Trump country. Basically the town, 7-8% of the people there voted for Trump. And this is a direct effect of Trump's tariff policies. This Tyson plant is closing down, and 3,200 people out of 11,000 will lose their jobs. I don't know what they're going to do. I hope they have a good social welfare backup, a safety net, a social safety net there. But I seriously doubt they do, because it's Nebraska. Who's the governor of Nebraska? I don't even know right now, but I'm sure it's a Republican. Every aspect of American life is more expensive, and that's on Fox News. Basically, Fox News is basically Trump TV. See if we got any comments yet. You guys go ahead and comment. I'd love to see more commenting on the channel if you're watching. I didn't vote for this. A revolt against Doge cuts deep in Trump country. Let's see what we have there. I didn't vote for this. A revolt against Doge cuts deep in Trump country. Trump administration policy slashing staffing and funding for public lands, so waking a sleeping political giant in Montana. Will either party notice? I used to live in Montana. It's a great state, but it is very red. The road to the tiny hamlet of Marion in northwest Montana is lined with the thick trees of the Flathead National Forest. Beautiful country. That's where I lived. I worked at Glacier Park. I lived there in Columbia Falls. With modern homesteads of trailers and modest homes dotting clearings here and there outside a timber frame cafe called the Hilltop Hitching Post, one of the only gathering spots for Marion's population of less than 1,200. Hunter Terry Zink pulled up in a dusty, well-used F-150 pickup and got out wearing a camo jacket against the early September chill and ball cap atop wire-rimmed glasses. Zink, 57, is a third-generation houndsman who hunts big game, including mountain lions and bears. He also owns an archery target business. He's a rural Montanan whose way of life and livelihood depend on public lands. He led me into the hilltop where half the people inside knew his name, to a corner where he sat drinking diner coffee. You don't meet anyone more conservative than me, and I didn't vote for this, Zink said. This is the Trump administration's Department of Government Efficiency. Deep cuts earlier this year to federal public lands agencies' funding and to the staff at those agencies who administer that funding and steward public lands and wildlife. Zink voted for Trump but said he doesn't agree with everything the president does. Zink clarifies he calls himself a conservative over calling himself a Republican. He doesn't like Trump's inflammatory rhetoric. I prefer common sense in the middle, he said. He believes wolves need to be hunted to manage their numbers. Abortion should only be legal in cases of rape, incest, and to protect the mother's life, and he's an ardent Second Amendment supporter. He's also a passionate advocate for public lands and wildlife, and the cuts have frankly ticked him off. He is vocal not just about protecting public lands, but also about protecting the staff at those agencies. We have to listen to our wildlife biologists. We have to be strong advocates for those people, Zink said. Hunting season had yet to open when we spoke, but Zink was already hearing from fellow hunters who had to cut their own way into trails to hunting camps after Forest Service trail crews were laid off en masse. He worries about wildlife management with agency scientists all terminated. Zink's story is just one example of how the DOGE cuts to public lands agencies are hitting rural conservative communities. One of this administration's strongest voting bases. One of this administration's strongest voting bases, the hardest. Starting in February, an estimated 5,200 people have been terminated from the agencies that manage the 640 million acres of federal public land in the U.S. That number doesn't include the many who took the administration's buyout or early retirement offers, also meant to cut staff. Further, Trump's 2026 budget proposes more budget cuts and a reduction of nearly 18,500 more public lands employees. Some Trump signs, a grizzly bear mounted. It looks like a public lands office. Similar. I actually work in a public lands office, and that's kind of what mine looks like. Much of the national spotlight has fallen on the impacts of these cuts to national parks, as that is the public lands model the majority of Americans are most familiar with. Yosemite, Yellowstone, Glacier, the Grand Canyon, to name just a few. Rocky Mountain Park. Yeah, there's a lot of them. Just a few of the most iconic. In the rural West, though federal public lands are more than just a scenic spot to take a family vacation once a year, these agencies are often the primary employers in the communities adjacent to public lands. Steve Ellis, chair of the National Association of Forest Service Retirees, who was stationed in small towns in Oregon, Idaho, Nevada, and Alaska, said that the federal payroll from the BLM, the Forest Service, and the Fish and Wildlife Service in these small rural communities is huge. It helps pay taxes. It helps keep the little hospitals open. Federal employees have kids in the schools where the funding from the state depends on the number of students. Hollow out the agencies, he said, and the communities themselves are hollowed out. In addition to the employees and their families who've been impacted, these staffing cuts are also affecting the ways of life and livelihoods that are major economic drivers out here for almost everyone else. 2. Ranchers and farmers use public lands for agriculture. Outfitters and agents and guides take guests into them. Hunters access them regularly to put food in the family freezer, and forestry, timber, and sawmill workers fulfill contracts on them for wildfire mitigation and timber. Yeah, this is my life. I live in this part of the country, and a lot of the money in these small towns comes from government workers who aren't lazy and aren't not working. They're out there doing their jobs, which are important jobs, especially for these rural people who do tend to be very conservative, and they all voted for Donald Trump. Even many of the federal workers voted for Donald Trump because they live in conservative towns and they have conservative leans. But, you know, they didn't educate themselves. They weren't well versed on, you know, what exactly Trump's policies were. And Trump lied a lot. Let's face it, he lied a bunch to keep himself out of jail, because that's where he would have ended up if he didn't become president. I mean, he did incite an insurrection on the Capitol in 2021. Trump won Montana by nearly 20 points in the 2024 election. Voters also ousted three-term Democratic Senator John Tester, a third-generation farmer from rural eastern Montana and the last legislator in the Senate who maintained a full-time job outside his political career. In favor of novice MAGA Republican Tim Sheehy, that race shattered spending records as Republicans went all in to flip the seat to win the Senate. For the first time in nearly a century, Montana, a famously purple state, went all red. But here, support for public lands is not a partisan issue. A 2024 poll of Montanans showed 95% of respondents had visited public lands in the last year. Yeah, I mean, if you've ever lived in Montana, you're surrounded by public lands. So it's what you do, you know. When I lived there, I went hiking pretty much almost every day with my dog up into the Great Bear Wilderness, you know, which is all public land. I mean, I think it's 3 million acres of public land. It's awesome. It's great, but it needs to be protected by federal workers and federal employees. Otherwise, it'll just be like, you know, other places around the world that you have been where the land's not protected. It's privately owned. There's garbage everywhere. You know, the trees are all cut down. You know, the wildlife is all killed. That's what we're heading towards if we keep up this Republican, you know, maniacal way of running the government. The same poll showed 98% of Democrats, 84% of independents, and 71% of Republicans said conservation issues are important to their voting decisions. Yet many national Republicans, including Trump, don't seem to understand what a non-starter cuts to public lands are for voters in Montana and much of the rest of the rural West. Yeah, I'd say Montana, Wyoming, you know, Colorado, where I live now, is not as much depending on public lands because of the tourist industry there. You know, Montana has a bit of a tourist industry around like Glacier Park and, you know, Bozeman and stuff like that, but it's nothing like Colorado. Colorado's a much more integrated state. Like there's more, you know, Denver has a lot of, you know, IT businesses and stuff like that, tech startups. So they're not completely dependent on public lands, which, you know, I would say Montana and Wyoming and not so much Idaho, but mostly Montana, Wyoming, maybe Nevada a little. Even though when Utah Republican Senator Mike Lee wrote a provision into Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill to sell off public lands to pay for tax cuts, Montana's 2 Republican senators, followed by Idaho's, led the outcry that got the proposal pulled. Out of all the controversial pieces of that bill, the public land sale proposal was one of the few that made MAGA senators break from the party line, and public land sales are just the tip of the iceberg here. Almost worse is they're selling off, and I saw it in Colorado, the amount of oil leases has like quadrupled since this administration, and that's just as bad as selling public land because those companies come in, they devastate the land, they pump out all the oil, and they leave, and they don't pay for any of the damage they do to the water systems or anything like that. You know, if they do get held accountable, then they just dissolve. You know, they're owned by hedge funds usually. Then they'll just dissolve the company, and nobody takes responsibility. And eventually, it becomes a Superfund site, and the American taxpayers are left holding the bag for the damage these corporations do. And that's gone on for years now, millennia even. I spoke to people across Montana from different professions and down the political range from independent to staunchly conservative, and they all agreed on a few things. They support adequately staffed public land and continued public access to them. And with further cuts and rollbacks proposed at the same time, people are beginning to personally feel the impacts of public lands tax. Policymakers are waking a political sleeping giant. You cannot fire our firefighters. You cannot fire our trail crews. You have to have selective logging and water restoration and healthy forests, Sink said. People in Washington, D.C., on the West Coast, East Coast, they don't understand what that means to us out here. I'm worried about what this means in the long term. Dust spilled behind Denny Iverson's pickup as he drove past the irrigation pivot. Sorry if this is a long article, guys, but this is important. This is important stuff. Dust billowed behind Denny Iverson's pickup as he drove past the irrigation pivot on his ranch land in Montana's Blackfoot River Valley. He was only irrigating a small strip of grass for his cattle to graze later in the season. Montana was experiencing its worst drought in 50 years, and the river was as low as Iverson 67 had ever seen it. He stopped the truck and gazed out at his fields from under the brim of a ball cap as worn as his jeans. The landscape here is beautiful. Yeah, I've kayaked the Blackfoot River. It's a beautiful area. The landscape here is beautiful. Cupped as it is in federal public lands, the surrounding mountains are national forests managed by the U.S. Forest Service. Much of the Blackfoot River is managed by the Bureau of Land Management. Iverson explained that most ranches in Montana have a base ranch with significant acreage and then rely on nearby federal land or state land for summer pasture in what are called grazing allotments. His allotment is on BLM land in the mountains near the old mining town of Garnet. Land he treats like his own, taking care, not overgrazing it. A ranch this size, 700 private acres, could still operate without a public land allotment by leasing other private land, but that's much more expensive, prohibitively so. For most ranchers down in the Southwest, he said, many ranches are a whopping 90% federal land allotments. It's often much less than that in western Montana. I know this sign. I know right where this is. We're trying to keep enough water in the river to keep the fish alive, Iverson said. He's part of the Blackfoot Challenge, a community group made up of landowners, public land agency partners, and organizations that coordinate efforts to conserve the rural way of life and the natural resources in the valley and administer federal funding to do so. My hay production was at 60% this year. We're in a terrible drought, and getting assistance with that will be slow to come. From January to May, the Blackfoot Challenge saw $4.6 million in already appropriated multi-year funds from federal public land agencies, including U.S. Forest Service, BLM, and Fish and Wildlife, frozen. Those funds were frozen. Those funds, which the challenge receives directly and then uses to work on collaborative projects, went to implement good water and irrigation practices, good weed management, good grazing practices, and a myriad of other projects, Iverson said. Those included drought resilience and wildfire mitigation, which ranchers rely on to keep their lands healthy and their operations viable. Funding was also frozen for conservation easements, voluntary legal agreements between landowners and land trusts or public land agencies that permanently protect the land for its working and conservation values while limiting development. Beautiful Montana. When I asked Iverson if these cuts are affecting how he'll vote, he said, "For me, it's about what are they doing for Montana? Are they advocating for conservation and farmers and ranchers and the things I really care about?" He's waiting for things on the ground to shake out. One of the other major sectors in rural Montana reeling from the cuts is forestry, a big umbrella that includes wildfire mitigation specialists, sawmill workers, and other timber workers. I spoke to a forester in western Montana who owns a forestry business and employs a hand crew that does wildfire mitigation, thinning projects, service work, or on timber sales and tree planting. Yeah, if you guys don't know already, a large part of the Forest Service's wildlife mitigation is contractors. It's like these small businesses. I mean, a lot of them are ex-firefighters that worked for the Forest Service, not all of them, but a lot of guys like this guy in Montana, they have a small business where they'll have a tender truck, a water truck, or a small crew that does, a friend of mine does this actually. A small crew that does, cutting, they cut out small fuel, basically trees out of the forest, and, in the forest, they contract out to the forest, they bid on a contract, they get the contract, they get paid, and they do the work. So a lot of it's not done by Forest Service workers, but you still need the federal workers to manage all this and stuff, and if you're cutting off the dollars that go into those contractors, it's just as bad as firing the federal workers that do the work too. Missoula County, a great place to live. Oh, this is a super long article. Politico does some deep dives into stuff. That guy looks like a Montanan. The wildlife belongs to people, that's true. So guys, that's a political article. I encourage you all to go read it for yourselves. I'm not going to read it all here because it's very, very long. Yeah, the Blackfoot Valley. A mostly Republican group of voters who are highly motivated by public lands has organized and caused an upset before. In 2018, midway through Trump's first administration, which slashed national monuments and opened increased amounts of public land to resource extraction, hunters and anglers in Idaho and Wyoming voted down Republican gubernatorial candidates who attacked public lands in the Trump vein. Something similar would easily happen here. Montana is home to more hunters than Idaho or Wyoming or any other western state for that matter, with more than 3 in 5 voters considering themselves a hunter or an angler. Rich, who's regarded as an independent, recently took a retired senator and congressman, both of whom represented eastern states, out into the Bob Marshall Wilderness, the Bob they call it, on horseback. We were standing at a high mountain lake and I said, remember, the coolest thing is that this belongs to every American equally. Whether you're in New York City or Montana, we have the money and the technology to tame every single landscape. The reason we have wild places in their natural state is because we as a society have chosen that. If we no longer choose that, it will go away. I think we'll be Europe. Yeah, then we'll be Europe. I think that if there is a place that can galvanize across the geospatial spectrum, it's the treasure of our public lands, waters, wildlife, fisheries, Rich said. The things that we have that are uniquely American. Yeah, so I don't want to linger on this subject too long, but staying on the public land subject, you know, that's the difference between the U.S. and Europe and Asia and a lot of other places. The billionaires don't care because the billionaires have their own ranches. They have their own, forests. They own personal, giant, 100,000-acre ranches in Montana in some cases. But for the general public, the greatest gift to us was the national parks and the Public Lands Act and all that stuff, I think done by like Teddy Roosevelt and people like that. You could, if the economy is bad like it is right now, you could take a vacation to your public lands for pretty inexpensive. Trump's making it more expensive. The Republicans in general making it more expensive. I think it went from, it used to be $25 to get into a national park. Now it's $75 for most of them. But at the same time, you could still get a year pass to any national park, any BLM site. It's called the America the Beautiful Pass for, it was under $100. I think Trump just jacked it up to about $150. But still, $150, you get this pass. You can go anywhere, any public land, basically for free, park, all that stuff. You have to pay more to camp and stuff, but, it's a good deal. Okay, so that was a long story. What's our general timing at now? 3450. 4 views. Okay, all right. Thanks for coming, guys. Go ahead and subscribe. Sign up for the channel. That'd be great. Okay, back to our not acceptable. Pro-Trump Somali migrant breaks with president over racist remarks. Yeah, Trump's a racist. Welcome to the club. Maha moms in revolt over the EPA walking back rules on forever chemicals and other harmful substances. Yeah, are they walking back the PFAS rule? Longtime Trump voter struggles to pay for health insurance because of Trump. So, Mr. Trump's big beautiful bill is big bull. Tell me why you just jacked up my health insurance premium, because they said they were going to do that. Literally went from $75 a month to $165 for two of us. Wow, they're getting a good deal. I pay about $200 for one. This is ridiculous because my husband has to have insurance for radiation therapy. I voted for Trump, but this has rubbed me raw because how you gone mess up all programs. How you went and messed up all programs might be the more appropriate way to say that, but I'm not going to be a stickler about grammar, especially with MAGA. Who else has seen a rise in your health insurance premiums? By the way, we are a small handyman service, and we don't make hundreds of thousands of dollars, so we pay our own premium. It's not like insurance through a W-2 wage job, which makes it worse because why? Here she is on March 1st, 2021. She's not feeling like this anymore. Yes, sir. Go Trump, go. Trump can run for Congress in 2022 in Florida. If he wins the seat and Republicans take over the House of Representatives, he could become the Speaker of the House. Then who thinks that Trump would work that hard? I mean, yeah, he would easily win. He probably wouldn't have to campaign that much. But, members of the House of Representatives, although they don't work much, they have to work much harder than Trump actually does as the President of the United States. I mean, to do all this to be the Speaker of the House, forget it. That's a lot more work than the President of the United States. Amen. Looks like the President may be Bible literate. If we all prayed together and turned away from the evil, maybe God would have mercy and things could be good. Come on, people, a good life, a godly life is a great life. I promise it is so much better than the life I once had lived. What are you waiting for? The end to see. That's the thing with these reborn Christians. Like, it's black and white. You're either like a hardcore Christian or you are the devil. What are you waiting for? It's like they don't understand that there's people out there like me who could be an atheist and still have morals and be a good person and not, become a raging maniac drug addict like she probably was, which most reborn Christians I ever met were either drug addicts, sex addicts, criminals before, and then they find God and they swing completely the other way. That's part of their personality disorder, though. It doesn't have anything to do with me, because I'm not a Christian. I'm an atheist, doesn't mean that I'm an evil person. Oh, here we go. Well, guess what? When you start to burn, it's too late. No lie. You can tell or drug to numb. And a lot of these people got into drugs too early, so they didn't finish school, so they can't write a sentence. In reality, that's for use as that device you are reading this post on. Love each other and help each other out. Life would be so much better with more positive thinkers and overachievers. I work with some awesome people. We come together and make our place better. Just think of this. All right, she's obviously an idiot. Arkansas loses PBS, Public Broadcasting Television. Yeah, that's what they voted for. Arkansas becoming first state to sever ties with PBS effective July 1st. Little Rock, Arkansas. The commission that oversees public television in Arkansas voted Thursday to sever ties with PBS, making it the first state to end its contract with the broadcast giant that provides popular television programs such as Sesame Street, Nova. Yeah, everybody thinks PBS is just like NPR, which is middle of the road. It's not left like everybody says. They're pretty honest, and they usually have a fair assessment. I think they've even tacked more towards the middle to the right since Trump got back in and, defunded them. They're trying to show that they could be a little more Trumpian. The 8-member Arkansas Education Television Commission, made up entirely of appointees of the governor, announced in a news release Thursday that it planned to disaffiliate from PBS effective July 1st, citing annual membership dues of about $2.5 million it described as not feasible. The release also cited the unexpected loss of about that same amount of federal funding from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which was targeted for closure earlier this year. Yep, not surprised. Arkansas. I mean, what's the governor's name there? Sarah Huckabee. She's a total redneck idiot. Huckabee making it MAGA TV. Okay, nice. Not surprised. Arkansas cut ties with a channel that provides educational program. Not surprised, considering Arkansas is 36th in education. Classic hookup of authoritarian impulses with the MAGA mentality, right? Changing channels to any one of 100 others wasn't choice enough. Now no one can watch it. Perfect. Okay. Let's see what's going on X today. Bondi Beach Hanukkah attack kills 15. Hero Muslim seller saves lives. Father and son Sahid and Naveed Akram, inspired by Islamic State ideology, opened fire at Archer Park, killing 15, including Rabbi Eli Schlanger and a 10-year-old girl. With dozens injured, the 43-year-old Syrian-born Ahmed, shot in the arm and leg, underwent surgery and drew praise as a hero from Premier Chris Minns. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese called it pure evil and anti-Semitism, ordering flags at half-mast while vigils drew thousands amid questions over police response and security lapse.
Fort Hood or San... A lot of conservatives in particular would say that the rise in Islamophobia is a result not of hate, but of fear, a legitimate fear, they say, of quote-unquote jihadist terrorism, whether it's Fort Hood or San Bernardino or the recent truck attack in New York. What do you say to them?
I would say our country should be more fearful of white men across our country, because they are actually causing most of the deaths within this country. And so if fear was the driving force of policies to keep America safe, Americans safe inside of this country, we should be profiling, monitoring, and creating policies to fight the radicalization of white men.
A lot of conservatives in particular.
So that's probably taken out of context because it was December 15th, but this guy, God Saad, who there are no words to describe this creature. I like Ilhan Omar, actually. I think she's a good person. Compared to Trump, she's an angel, basically. A Muslim saying to a Jew, "I'm sorry for everything that happened in Sydney. The only labels that matter are good versus evil." Yeah, no kidding. Where's that?
Thank you, brother. What's your name?
Rabbi Levi.
Rabbi Levi Farouk.
Yeah, Farouk.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
Nice to meet you. I'll see
Well,
you on the way back.
I'll be around, so, you know.
Sorry
There you
about
go.
everything that happened over in Sydney.
Appreciate
Yeah,
you
no
saying that.
problem, no problem, no problem.
You celebrate Hanukkah?
I'm Muslim.
The Muslim.
Yeah. But I
Look,
I'm gonna
the
give you a
fact
hug.
the fact that
Yeah.
you're saying that, you know, in the
No,
Jewish
absolutely.
community, I got it all the time, but
Yeah.
this is the first time I get it from a Muslim, so
Absolutely.
it means so much to me now.
No, absolutely, brother. We're all in this together.
We're in this together, in the same world we are, so
Yeah,
let's just
inshallah.
add in lights.
Peace and love. That's all we got.
Inshallah. Yeah.
Inshallah. All right.
Alhamdulillah.
Thank you, brother. What's your name?
Rabbi Levi.
Rabbi Levi Farouk.
Yeah, Farouk.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
Nice to meet you. I'll see
Well,
you on the way back.
I'll be around, so, you know.
Sorry
There you
about
go.
everything.
Here's the hero who, and I think he's, from his name, I'm guessing he's a Muslim. He's the one who disarmed one of those, you know, far right ISIS shooters in Australia, and he was shot by the other one for his heroism. Okay, he's a Lebanese Christian hero, I guess. Ahmed Ahmed, the Bondi Beach hero, God. But it doesn't matter what religion he is, really, does it? He jumped in there and he reacted. And I guess he was shot in the shoulder. He could have easily been killed, but shot in the shoulder. Here he is. Ahmed is a real-life hero. Last night, his incredible bravery no doubt saved countless lives when he disarmed a terrorist at enormous personal risk. Here's some fresh video. The Bondi detective moves into position behind a tree, exposes himself to take aim using his Glock 19 or 26 from a distance of approximately 40 meters to gun down Saeed Akrim. Let's watch that again.
Ouais.
Il y a une minute de plus, on était dehors.
Attentat, frère. Eh, y'en a un, il est en dessous du bridge.
Genre, c'est un attentat devant nos yeux.
Ouais.
Il y a une minute de plus, on était dehors.
Attentat, frère. Eh, y'en a un, il est en dessous du bridge.
Genre, c'est un attentat devant.
Took him out. Good job, detective. Piers Morgan. The Bondi terror attack hero recovering in hospital. Get well soon, Ahmed. Oh, shut up, Benny Johnson. Benny Johnson, the Prime Minister of Australia. You guys know Benny Johnson is a closet homosexual. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but, you know, he's constantly talking about his Christian and all that crap. But, you know, Milo Yiannopoulos, the you know, right-wing MAGA movement's token homosexual, came out last week and said that Benny Johnson is actually a homosexual, and him and his wife swing with men and women and all this stuff. And you know, they could do whatever they want, but you can't do that and then condemn the LGBTQ community on your giant platform and, you know, promote laws that hurt people like that when you're actually, you know, behind the scenes taking the cock, basically.
We take ASIO's advice very seriously. We work closely with them. We receive regular updates as well. The Director General of ASIO has warned about a range of threats, be it anti-Semitism, the rise of right-wing extremist groups as well. And we continue to work closely with our security agencies. We take ASIO's advice.
I'm not even going to play Benjamin yet. Netanyahu already saw what he said. Oh, I guess I'll play it because you guys didn't see it, but maybe you didn't see it.
On August 17th, about 4 months ago, I sent Prime Minister
Netanyahu's got to make it all about him and Israel.
A letter in which I gave him warning that the Australian government's policy was promoting and encouraging anti-Semitism in Australia. I wrote, "Your call for a Palestinian state pours fuel on the anti-Semitic fire. It rewards Hamas terrorism. It emboldens those who menace Australian Jews and encourages the Jew hatred now stalking your..."
Okay. So Hadi says, "You and your entire demonic state are the cancer of this world." The family of the Bondi Beach terror attackers are now calling the police on journalists at their house, demanding privacy and complaining that the media keeps knocking on their door and disrupting them. Deport the entire family. Right Angle News Network. I guess they're not answering the door. I probably wouldn't answer the door either.
Oh, no one's answering.
Did they call you? They called you?
Yeah.
What they said?
Oh, no, you're going that console. I'm not allowed. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hero police officer Scott Dyson was shot multiple times in the Sydney massacre and is fighting for his life. Please pray for his recovery. That sucks. Okay, guys, that's the news for today. Thanks for coming back to the SpinCycle. Please come again. Participate in the channel. Get a subscription. Subscribe. That's the easiest thing you can do to help the channel. There's the guy disarming him, actually. Watch this. He runs in there.
Oh!
Takes the gun away from that guy. And he gets shot by the other guy, who's right there, I think. ISIS fucks. Alright, guys. Thanks for watching. Anybody who is watching, 6 of you guys. And I will see you next time.